Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of North Dundas, today being Thursday, April 11th. Moved by Councillor Annable, seconded by Councillor Lennox, that the meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Dundas be hereby called to order at 4:31 p.m. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annable, that the agenda be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Annable, second by Councillor Lennox, that the meetings of the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of North Dundas held on March 21, 2024 be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. At this point, now that everyone's settled, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think we will have to move. I think we've hit the number. At this point, we're going to move it into closed session. And whenever we move into closed session, you guys will remain. There's enough of you that will move out. We'll go to the boardroom. We'll be 10, 15 minutes, and we'll come back. Moved by Councillor Annable, second by Councillor Lennox, that Council proceed to closed session at 4:32 p.m. pursuant to Section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001, subsection B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, specifically a human resource issue. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. That's carried. Okay. Okay, we're back. So moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Annable, that council return to open session at 4:44 PM. All those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Annable, second by Councillor Lennox, that staff proceed as directed in closed session regarding the discussed human resources item. All those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. We're going to move into delegations, and we have two delegations with us tonight. One is ready to present. And so, Mr. Smurl, if you would come ahead, please. Mr. Smurl from South Nation Conservation.
Remembered this today. Mr. Mayor, Miss Deputy Mayor, councillors all, I have sent the report and you've had a chance to take a quick look at it. I want to run over it and make a few corrections. The minute you write something, something changes and everything is different. And you probably know I'm referring to number 2. So looking at number 2, I named the executive nominated in February, in March, but very shortly thereafter, Deputy Mayor or Mayor Pierre Leroux from Russell took a new position as CAO of the Nation municipality. So he resigned effective immediately, and replacing him, he was on the executive, of course. So we went to the past chair, George Deroux, in other words, the past chair, and George Deroux will be back as that position. And it changes the other comments I made there briefly, because I said there would be no representative this time from the City of Ottawa. Each time we have the executive, there are 3 people on it, but there's 4 areas from which they're drawn. And it looked like Ottawa wasn't going to be represented, but now Ottawa is going to be represented, and it'll be Russell that won't be until there's a new person elected on the board. And Prescott Russell has another member to nominate to put on. So right at the moment, we only have 11 members. And I took a moment to tell you who they were on page 2. And at the bottom of the page, I mentioned how it was, the first page, I mentioned how it was set up. And if there's any questions on that, you can ask me as we go along. I mentioned all the councillors in every area, and under Francois Saint-Amour, the third different one down or fourth, Prescott Russell will now have a new representative, hasn't been appointed yet, and that representative will just be on the group. And usually, I made some comments about, usually there are 13 voting members, and usually the past chair is one of the members of the executive and doesn't have to be a person representing an area. But in the case of myself a few years ago, and of George Deroux and of Pierre, because they're already there as an elected member, therefore they're sort of holding 2 positions, but they only vote once. And so therefore, we only will have 12 people for the next part of a term. Number 3 is kind of important, I think, because you knew we had 4 standing committees, and the 4 standing committees were, as listed, Clean Water, Communications, Fish and Wildlife, and Forestry. And we decided to have one large committee for various reasons, including that there was a lot of repetition. The committees were formed about 30 years ago, and the repetition was mainly from staff who had to do the same presentation to each of the 4 committees. So there was a decision by the board to get rid of those 4 committees, and they would have one new committee, and the new committee would incorporate people from various stages and areas. And if you flip back through, I've attached a copy of the new Watershed Advisory Committee, and if you look at it quickly, you'll see that it can be a total of 29 people, because the executive is always ex officio. And you'll notice that we have some new members, and they're members at large that haven't been on. We have some other people that have been members of South Nation in the past, but have been carried forward. And we have representation from each of the 4 municipalities, and it'll be a staffer in those cases. And we have a representative from the River Institute, that's the Ottawa River, the St. Lawrence River Institute, and the Ottawa River Keeper. So there's a heck of a lot of people going to be on this committee. And the board approved this committee at the last meeting. You'll notice there are 2 spaces not yet filled, the second one and the down farther, 22 from Leeds Grenville. And in its wisdom, the board decided that, number one, they would approve the committee and they would select the first chair. And myself, I made a motion that the deputy person, the deputy person in charge of South Nation would be the person, chair of that committee. And the members decided no, they would like me to do it. So I was nominated and approved, and then they asked me if I would. And so I said I thought so. It's going to be a very interesting and large committee. It's going to be a large and an interesting and a challenging committee because the people represent all sorts of groups from across the whole area. And the area goes from the St. Lawrence to the Ottawa, from Brockville to Orleans, and almost the Quebec border, with Raisin River taken out from in between. And the people that are there representing various groups are pretty focused on their particular groups. So we're having our first meeting next 17th, next Wednesday, and in my opening remarks, I'm going to say a few words about we want them to represent their group, but we want them to be able to work together for the objectives of South Nation as well as their group. So it'll be really interesting to see how this committee goes. Are there any questions today? Okay.
Questions, comments, members of council? I just want to interrupt you, Mr. Smurl. I think I was attending a meeting when there was great exuberance over the Ag Committee or the Forestry Committee because now Ag was going to have a bigger voice, if it would be, at South Nation Conservation. But when I look at this one, there's 3 from Ag. I just have concerns with Ag being us, and but I have great faith in Jackie Pemberton. I don't know Alain Jacquemart. Is he from La Nation, that area?
Well, he's from French Forestry. So he's from the Forestry Committee and the French section of it. And all of the, yes, that would be the area. I don't think it's listed on the sheet I gave you where they were really from. No, I didn't. So there was, I don't know that there was much concern about the numbers, but one of the reasons why there are more agricultural people is there are a number of grants that are given to agricultural areas and to individuals to help keep the water clean, to close wells, etc. And it was felt that to have that representation was important. And they're certainly not going to have a voting majority, but the objective of the chair will be to try to bring everyone online to remember first South Nation and second their own area. Good luck, eh?
Well, that's somewhat my feeling about the Ag end of it. It's I see 3.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder. But I believe you have more.
Yes, please. I want you to look at number 6 and note the number of people that have visited the South Nation Conservation Parks and Properties. In 2023, 190,000 people visited, and that's a pretty significant number. I thought you'd also be interested in our particular area, and Castbridge Picnic and Dock area south of Winchester has just 8,500. The Oshman Forest near Ormond has a 1.2 kilometer walking trail, over 7,400. Oak Valley, 2,900. And Camp Sheldrick, east and south of here, is mainly looked after and leased to the Scouts of Canada. So we don't keep track of numbers, but Scouts of Canada from Eastern Ontario and Eastern and Northern United States use it a lot, especially this summer. So the other areas that I noted are the docks and the dams, and a lot of people visit them and use them to put boats in, etc. And you're probably aware that South Nation has been quite good working, in my opinion, and I'm prejudiced, but they've been quite good at working with the communities. For example, the Rotary Club for years has had put that has put that fountain in the St. Lawrence, in the South Nation River, and they were having trouble doing it. So South Nation took it over and have for the last few years been putting it in and taking it out. And South Nation puts the docks in and takes them out each year as well. So there's a lot of work going back and forth, and the partnership that our municipality and other municipalities have developed with them, I think is quite good. I just wanted you to note number 8, and it's a little bit of education as well, but the February meeting of SNCA was really 3 meetings. And the first one, we are able to conduct judicial hearings. And there was an official concern listed, and we had a hearing, and we successfully dealt with it at the first part of the February meeting. And then the second part, and that's the italics there. Several years, you remember when Walkerton had the terrible problems a few years ago, and the province came out with rules about making sure that clean drinking water was available. They asked that every municipality set up a source water protection committee, and we have one in this area, and that group answers to the 2 conservation authorities. So about 4 times a year, that group makes presentations to South Nation at one meeting and Raisin at another meeting, and then anything they decide or recommend, it's kind of like this board of South Nation, they have to approve it before it's official. And so South Nation does the approvals, and so does Raisin, and then it moves forward from there. So just to give you an update on what that was. And I wanted to mention as well, very quickly, there was a municipal meeting this morning at South Nation, and there were 60-plus people there, plus the staff. And I know Jamie was there, and I don't know if anyone else from our area was there. I don't think so.
Yeah, there was a couple.
A couple? And I didn't notice others, but it was, I thought it was well presented, and it started out 7 or 8 years ago with half a dozen or a dozen people, and it's gotten to a fair number that people seem to appreciate. So I haven't seen the results of the write-up yet, but I will. Also, we have a couple of pollinator areas that have been developed in our area. One in 22-23 on the Lafleur Road. I think it's near where the well is. And there's one going to be done this year on the Liscombe Road, which is on the other side of Parmalat. And they work with North Dundas on this. And at the meeting this morning, they gave North Dundas credit for the support and the partnership that's working there. I wanted to mention that there's been a new property just purchased from between Mountain and South Mountain, west of number 1. It's 75 acres of hardwood, and because it's in North Dundas, I thought you'd be interested in that. And I also wanted to mention that there have been roadside trees planted in various parts of North Dundas, and this year, I think Jamie's involved in picking the place that it's going to be. It's around the Chesterville area. There's going to be 1,800 or 1,700 trees put in, and they'll be at that very shortly. But the other interesting part about that is South Nation works with not only the municipalities, but also individuals. One of the owners along that area said he'd like to have some trees on his side of the fence as well. So not only will there be trees along the road, but there'll be trees on the other side of the fence, making a better line, if you like. And I think those are the main things, except you know that all of the things we do are now divided into 3 categories. Number 1, the ministry says thou shalt. Number 2, the agreements with municipalities and others. And number 3, all of the other things that we used to do that the province says you can no longer do unless you have agreement of your municipalities. And one of them is tree planting. And so we went to all of the municipalities over the last 6 months and asked them for their support for moving in these areas under number 3, 100%. 16 of the 16 municipalities supported us. And I included that letter that you see that I sent out to the Watershed Committee. Didn't really need to be sent. It just not being very good with computers, I didn't know how to separate one from the other, so you got it all. Are there any questions, Mr. Chair?
Well, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Smurl, and look to my fellow councillors to see if there's questions or comments. I do look at my deputy mayor because she has spoken about the watershed and salt and the wellhead protection areas and salt. Is there a question you could ask Mr. Smurl to clarify?
No, that was the Source Protection Committee, where the province is putting new regulations on salt applications, because a lot of salt, of course, when the snow melts, it ends up in water.
Yes.
And so they're setting up new rules as to where snow can be stored. They can't be in vulnerable areas. Yeah, that kind of thing for the salt.
Does South Nation have any weight in those discussions?
Well, they can make recommendations and not a lot of weight, but if you've looked at the South Nation River, it isn't blue and clear, is it? And one of the reasons for that is because it's a farming agricultural area, and not only does the ground go in, but so does additional phosphorus and fertilizer, et cetera. But it's closely monitored and checked, and they're trying to keep it at a lower level, and they're working with farmers to spread back farther from the edge and not use as much, because there's no use putting twice what you need on and having half it go into the water, and that's dollars. So the farmers are being pretty good at working with us at checking and going on. So I don't have a perfect answer, but yes, we're aware, and yes, we want good, clean water.
Thank you, Mr. Smurl. Oh, Mr. Councillor Lennox.
So, as we all know, it's very hard to stump you on a question, Mr. Smurl, so I'll try one, a techie-type question. How do you capture the metrics in point 6 for the number of visitors to each area that are tracked?
Excellent. We have counters. And they are counters that automatically see people in and out and click. I suppose if one person went in and out 6 times, he would get 6 visits, but most people don't do that. And almost all of our parks and areas like that do have counters, and it was felt that, and by the way, they have not been vandalized. We've been pretty lucky that way, and I think people have been pleased to be a part of it. And want things like that to happen. So they seem interested in knowing about the visitors. And I'm always interested in knowing if the parks and the areas we have for public are being well used or not. And in the, I gave you a copy, Mr. Mayor, I gave you all a copy of the annual report of South Nation. And it's mostly pictures, etc. But one of the pictures you may want to look at is the walking route that's been built, the boardwalk that's been built through the Leitrim wetlands. And if you've never visited, you should sometime when you go to that area south of Ottawa, go for a walk on it. It was half a mile or half a kilometer or so long before, and the way they got the money for that walk was the builder decided to put a couple $100 every house built into a fund. And it came to over $1 million with all the money they've collected, and that's basically the money that's been used. And so they've just added $1 million to make the circuit complete. It goes in one place and comes out other to the main road, and it gets, I think, 5,000 to 6,000 visits by the counters a month. And it's in the city, which is important too. Is that all good enough, sir?
Oh, that was perfect. I always enjoy when you come here, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smurl. Our next delegation is, I don't have the proper name, but it's the Chesterfield Mural Restoration Delegation, and Mr. Duncan, MP Duncan, and I'm not sure who else is going to join. You have room for one more.
And they can come up, or I can introduce them from back there, whichever.
Okay, it's up to you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'd say there's no pressure to say it's always a pleasure whenever I come to the meeting. Let's see if Councillor Lennox will say the same thing at the end. I don't know. It is good to be back with you, albeit in a different seat from where I spent many years. I hope everybody is well, and I know one of the first rules I always try to respect is not to read my entire letter that you have been provided and had a background on, but to summarize perhaps what our request and the effort that has developed in the village of Chesterville over the course of the last few months. I am joined in the audience by a few people. Hard to pick one just to sit beside me, but I'll introduce Mark McMillan from the Chesterville Lions Club, Carrie Keller, local mural artist and chair of the Art in the Waterfront in Chesterville, Pete Lyonar from the Gathering House Church in the village, and Gordon Dean representing both the store but the Dean family as well here tonight. I've appreciated their efforts and just ease to work with over the course as we try to bring a project together that I believe deserves council support and approval of. So by way of background, why am I here? I should say I'm not here in my role as a member of Parliament, although I just come from the House of Commons and I'm going to vote for 6 hours tonight when I am done, but I'm here in a volunteer capacity. When I served as mayor in the summer of 2017, we lost a wonderful man, a wonderful businessman in our community with Mike Dean's passing. I remember Gordon calling me and Angela Rutley at the time in saying that the family was looking in his memory over the course of the few days of the wake and funeral was to take donations in and have a reserve fund set aside for a future project in the village of Chesterville that would do something to beautify. Mike was always very proud of their heritage location in Starton, Chesterville, and there's probably not many projects that have taken place by volunteers over the years that have not been supported by the Dean family. So I said, not sure what that project will be or when, but I would certainly try to lead an effort to make sure the funds are put to a good cause with the family's approval, and I think we have that. You can see from the photo in the package, if you go to the main corner in the village of Chesterville, both either driving through or walking by County Road 7/Main Street /Water Street /King Street, the large mural that was done at a former commercial property of the Fulton Block was done about, doing my math, about 18 years ago by the Chesterville Lions Club. And as we know from many mural projects in the community over time, it's a beautiful focal point, but when you did them at that time with the technology of wood, they don't last forever. And so, as you can see from the photos in the appendix, the condition of the mural has aged quite significantly, particularly in the last couple of years, and is due for a remake and perhaps a reprint as to what we are proposing. So I started doing some research as I've been driving through Chesterville, as I often do, and thought this might be an ideal project. Started doing some research, asking around, and turns out, to no surprise, Mark and the Chesterville Lions were already brainstorming some ideas as well. So what we did was take their ideas and my ideas and kind of blend before you the proposal here tonight. We figured it's going to cost about $11,000, but doing a new mural on the side of that building. The Gathering House is the new owner since the original one. They've inherited this piece of beautification in the downtown. They're not a commercial business that used to be there, zoned, I believe, institutional would be the proper word, or for a church space. And so they've graciously agreed to let us come forward with a proposal, and they would continue to host it on the side of their building. And we're looking at doing murals as they're done now, is where Carrie has done a beautiful piece that's in her living room right now. But what they do is actually take a high-resolution photo and blow that up, print on aluminum sheets, and the aluminum does last for decades, as opposed to, although 18 years is not too bad of a span, it would last decades even longer than that. And there's many examples, which I know council are aware of, for that. We've come together with a proposal to fund all of this, and we believe we have a time frame, albeit aggressive but achievable, with council support, to have a new mural installed there by the time, actually, to be unveiled at Art in the Waterfront this year on Saturday, June the 1st. Carrie's done a beautiful design, which has been approved by the Lions Club as the original proponents of the original project. And I have a copy of it here, but I know legally that if I share it's a public document. We'd like to surprise members of the public that weekend, but I would say the design incorporates the previous Chesterville's history, with also some components of things we're proud of in the village of Chesterville now. I will perhaps share that one-on-one with council members who may be interested before making your decision afterwards. But I can certainly say it is a beautiful piece with great color and a true resemblance of Chesterville then and now. Ways to pay for it, that's always the fun part. Gordon and I have spoken, the Dean family have spoke. They too agree that it is time for a refurbishment of that mural that gets a lot of eyes and traffic looking at it in the downtown core. There is just over $3,100 in the fund that has built up since 2017. Mr. Garrow has been good every year to add some interest that grows year by year on that from the original amount. The Dean family has graciously offered $1,500 towards the project. The Chesterville Lions Club has offered $1,500, and the Chesterville Legion has offered $1,000 of a recent donation they had given to Lions. Lions is choosing to use towards this project. And the final piece of the puzzle is something that's, I never make anything easy, but an option I hope council will consider and support, is a CIP-like donation of matching up to $4,000 to do this project. So as council's aware, the CIP program is for commercial businesses. This was a commercial building back in the day when it was put on. Gathering House is now the proud owner of the Fulton Block building, but don't pay property tax. They wouldn't be eligible, or we wouldn't be eligible even for them to apply with the current criteria. However, this is out of the goodness of their heart and good faith, agreeing to keep it on. We need to do something here. So in speaking with administration briefly in the past couple of months, if council would consider perhaps through past surpluses of CIP funds to fund a matching grant of up to $4,000 for this facade improvement in the village of Chesterville. I think that keeps to the spirit of what the CIP is all about, is not giving 100% money towards the project, but to do matching. And as you can see, there would be, it wouldn't even be half, it would certainly be more, 7,000 coming from from the other sources and 4,000 coming through the principle of a CIP-like donation or funding for that. So I will leave this before council. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I tried to summarize that as best I could. The one other little point I will say, and you'll notice on the appendix of the photos as well, there's a 4x8 sign recognizing the Fulton Block in its historical significance. It too is in rough shape. So working with Shane Signs, what the Gathering House has agreed to graciously is to have that removed as well, and a smaller and better located sign that recognizes the name be actually around the corner that would be visible to pedestrian traffic, more of a plaque, aluminum plaque on the side that would just acknowledge the history and significance of that building. And that incorporates the project. I'm happy to take any questions, and we'll just say grateful once again to the folks I introduced at the beginning and our wonderful service clubs like the Lions that have stepped up to help with this.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mr. Duncan and or Eric, as we know each other, and Eric and Tony. Thank you for that. As I was talking to you before, you're a native son of South Mountain area, and I of Chesterville. That is something that you see all the time. You see that mural all the time. Every time you go through Chesterville, it's there. You sit at Meet Me on Main Street, or you go to Louis, or whatever you do in Chesterville, go to anywhere, you see that mural. And to see the pictures on the screen, which we don't really catch when we're going through crossing the bridge, you don't see the deterioration, and I can only imagine how rough a shape it would be in a matter of years if things aren't acted on. But it is heartening to see the different groups getting together from the community in Chesterville to offer support to this. I will open up to questions, comments from members of council. Councillor Lennox.
I'll just piggyback on Mr. Mayor here and say it's nice seeing the community help out the community and seeing the mural as you drive across the bridge and in Chesterville. You come accustomed to seeing it, and with everything, there's always change management, and with that is a dollar figure. Unlike Mr. Smurl, I doubt you have a clicker for a number of people that come through and see this mural.
I'm not as talented as Bill is. I apologize, Councillor.
But, you know, you're a Bill in training, and sometimes I look forward to when you come and visit us. Thank you, Eric.
Any other comments? I see I do have a question, and you don't want to release the rendering, the future rendering. Will it incorporate many of the things that we do see now on the mural?
Yes, so we'll incorporate all the original images that are on the mural and make space for what was before was Chesterville Times Gone By, so it was historical based, winter based, if you recall, and you can see, I think maybe on the macro photo on the first page, winter scenes. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't keep those scenes that are there, but add some stuff that represent the village today. So the waterfront area and some of the events that take place there, just to show busy, vibrant, community-oriented and social community that Chesterville is. And the one thing Carrie's done a wonderful job, as she always has, as we've seen time and time again in the community, is adding a lot of good color. So the point we made is winter scenes can be difficult with white and light blues. She's done a fantastic job to really give some color and punch. As you go by, it does catch your eye and does provide a good splash of color. The other point I'll maybe just raise while that photo is up, there as well, is we've kind of rounded off. You'll notice the mural at the top in the current version there is cut along. We're proposing actually to square it off, so it does actually make the mural a bit larger, and that round Chesterville years gone by would actually kind of be more square along the top to allow for a bit more of mural and art piece there as well.
Right, right. And you, as you mentioned Kerry Keller's name a few times already, I think of the mural on the side of the Joel Stuhl Arena in Winchester, and that was a Kerry Keller project, and on the same type of material that you're referring to here, and I anticipate it'll have a long life as it sits on the side of the arena as well.
I could maybe just add another point that I think I'm just realizing if I turn to my colleagues and asked if I missed anything. Mark would, I may just want to mention something as well, is on the bottom right-hand corner, we will put the people, the contributors to the project and their logos, as was done similar to the original one in 2006. So Township, the Mike Dean Memorial Fund, and the service clubs that contributed to it would be acknowledged there. The other thing we're going to do a little bit different, and I'll put my volunteer hat on with Meet Me on Main Street and involved with the old style with Councillor Annabelle of the hospital's anniversary mural. We put a piece out, a legend of sorts, the detailed of it. It's a large piece. Can be a bit clunky in the middle of the park. As technology evolves on the aluminum using it, one of the other things that Mark and our team are working on is actually to do a QR code on the bottom, not on the mural itself, but to the right of it, where people can actually go and they can scan their phone, and it'll provide the details about the mural and how it came together. And Mark and I were talking already, and just on the page, the landing page it goes to, here are the great service clubs or different things in town. Click here to like the Lions or Rotary or Legion's Facebook pages. So if you're new or looking at it, you can get a QR code that's less busy than a bunch of words on the side of a plaque or somewhere. We're going to evolve technology both and less wording on that to really let the art be the focal point.
Well, thank you. I look to my fellow councillors. We do want this project to get a start, and I look to Mr. Garreau, if I could ask Mr. Garreau about the funds that Mr. Duncan was referring to, reserve funds, unused CIP. Can you give us an update on that situation or what the possibilities are there?
Yeah, you use your accountant voice, yeah.
I guess as Mr. Duncan pointed out, the fund is not eligible under the current CIP guidelines, but there are funds available in the 2022 Township surplus funds of $54,530.46. So certainly it could come from there, but that's got nothing to do with CIP funding, and it shouldn't have because the project is not eligible for CIP funding.
No, I'd like to see that as a standalone and separate that from the CIP. I think that'd be the proper way to go. We don't want to muddy the waters with CIP. It's a well-running machine, and we don't want to change that up too much, but I look for thoughts and comments.
I support this. I would also like to see the separation. CIP has a strict, well, not a strict, a malleable policy attached to it. I would rather look elsewhere for the funds received, and I agree with Mr. Mayor here.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Annabelle?
I would like to see it through the CIP. Not CIP, the other. That's mostly for construction. This is aesthetic value.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Yurg?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to see some volunteers come together and improve something that is certainly falling apart. It is very noticeable as seen in the images and up front. And I don't want it to appear to be standing in the way by any means, but I do think maybe this is time, not necessarily right now, but certainly going forward, to have a conversation about how we handle pieces like this going forward in terms of municipal support, because we do have other murals, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn or out of line when I say the two in downtown Winchester at Sweet Corner and on Sam's Store were fully fundraised and supported by the group downtown, correct, and not municipally?
So as the chair of the one in Winchester, the first one, the hospital one,
Yep.
we did get a grant then from the CFDC back in
Okay.
2010.
Correct.
We didn't have a CIP then, but it was CFDC funds, but it was
Right.
led and
Same
fundraised and applied
concept. Yep.
through that committee, correct?
Yeah. So no, not to be a stick in the mud or stand in the way. This is an important project and is something that should be updated and certainly should be in much better shape than currently in. But I do think it's something that perhaps we take from this meeting and have conversations after the fact about how we, as a municipality, support stuff like this going forward and where ownership lies in terms of items of significance added by other user groups and who takes care of those repairs and such when the time comes.
Yes, and point well taken, Councillor, that this is unique in its way that it's come to an end of life almost, and we need to make sure that it stays in a presentable shape, and we have to maintain that. It should be maintained. Many things, but it's a discussion that needs to be had because other things will be looked at and considered for repairs or refurbishment, and we have to have an idea of the proper path to go down. So to your point well taken. We do need to discuss this further, but as we move ahead. Deputy Mayor.
I'm just wondering, have you approached other groups if they're going to have their name or their logo to donate money? I mean, our budget we've already taken a lot of money out of reserves this year, and there are other issues that come up over the years where something breaks down and which wasn't in the budget that we have to pay for. And I just wondered if you had approached anyone. And as an aside, since you mentioned that you can put a logo on, you should be approaching me after and we'll talk about it.
Fair enough. Doesn't get any easier than that. If you have the $4,000 check, we can. No, I'm kidding. I can certainly have a conversation. So we did speak to some of the other service clubs. Rotary was one as an example. They declined on this because they're working actually, to no one's surprise, like we have the clock and other ones. They have other projects of beautification that they are focusing on in the village, which is fine, and may be forthcoming in different ways in the future. But if there are those that want to, certainly we would not. I'd maybe compare it to Van Camp, where the up to, and if others come up and provide that, we can certainly look at that. I'm not opposed to that, and would never turn away somebody who's willing to support the project that way. And I would just say, in complimenting kind of in my answer to Councillor Uhrig, very good point. The mayor and I did have a bit of a conversation at exactly that point, and I believe CAO and Stephen Mann, we did as well, about the program, what it's about, and some modernizations. I know we made some tweaks a couple years in after creating it as well, and it does address this community beautification infrastructure where it is a facade, but it is a mural, but then who owns it? And as to the Lions and their goodwill, when I talked to Mark, I said, oh yeah, we've been talking about that. And then it was a matter of, it's about 10,000. I said, well, we have this Mike Dean's fund that he wasn't aware of. And I said, there could be this opportunity. That turns it being a 3-year effort of fundraising of different things into a much more manageable period as well. But definitely, I think the next time the CIP comes up for review even itself, the role of community assets and beautification stuff could be a consideration of groups not coming and asking for 100%. Council should do this, or the taxpayer should do this. We're putting up our portion and more than half. Could you help fund a portion of it as opposed to you do it, you look after it, and you pay for it type thing. So tries to balance off the budget considerations, which I know are many for the table.
Yeah, so we have the support, and I look at Mr. Garreau, and as with the Cenotaph project and us acting as the bank and all of that, that'll come into play in the same fashion, I'm sure. Okay.
And then
Nice
speaking with the CAO, there's another meeting, I believe, in a few weeks to come back, rightfully so. I always didn't like when community groups stood here and asked you to call the question and do all of that, so you can go back and reflect, and even an answer in time for your next meeting, one way or the other, will allow us to plan forward after that. So I appreciate council's time, and to the committee and those that have joined to help make this project happen.
Thank you. Nice seeing you again. Take care.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.
So we're going to move into action requests, and Mr. CAO Ben DeHaan, update the policy, the sick leave policy. Moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Annable, that council approve Council approves policy 22-2008 sick leave policy as amended to include a provision surrounding medical notes and clarification regarding the responsibility for the cost of continuing benefits through short-term, long-term, and WSIB leaves this 11th day of April 2024. Mr. Dahan.
Thank you, Council, and I'll be very brief with this one because we touched on it when we were talking about benefit enhancements and some of the other things we've talked about. But ultimately, what this is intending to do is just provide that clarity with respect to when the employer ceases to pay for benefits for those that are on long-term disability leaves, and essentially it codifies that after a year of being on long-term disability, the onus falls on the employee to pay for those benefits. Similarly with WSIB leave, so that's a leave associated with an injury at work, those benefits would continue to get paid until the employee enters that return to work process or that process is ended. Lastly, the other thing, as we were looking at this policy, we decided to update and make sure it's very clear is when the employer ourselves would pay for medical notes, and essentially what the policy is very clear on is if we are requesting a medical note, and I'll give a great example is, we have staff that have suffered some type of injury or illness that has not allowed them to come to work. They're ready and motivated to come back to work, but we want to make sure that the employee, when they're coming back to work, is able to do the duties that they are required to do. There is instances where we would ask for a medical note just to make sure that they're all cleared, or if there are some functional abilities that we need to be mindful of as they return to work so that they don't re-injure themselves or put themselves at risk of re-injury. So that's the intention there, because there are other instances where an employee has solicited a medical note, and we, at the employer side, we haven't required it. So we're just being very clear. If we require it or we ask for it, we pay for it. And if we haven't asked for it, that's the onus is on the employee if they've received it and paid for it.
Thank you. Questions, comments? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? See none. That's carried. Moved by Councillor Annabelle, second by Councillor Lennox, the Council approves policy 38-2012 training policy as amended this 11th day of April 2024. Mr. Dahan.
Yeah, thank you. And this one was intended to be a relatively straightforward update. We had at a director's level, we had talked about some of the, we'll call it like administrative changes that we were looking at with the training policy. I mean, training, of course, is something I know Council has prioritized for staff. To ensure that we are continuing to learn, grow, and develop professionally. And staff have always appreciated that, and we felt that it was an opportune time to make sure that the training policy was up to date and kind of reflected what I would call best practices, and just made sure that there was lots of clarity associated with the policy. So to that end, we did, it was intended to be a minor tweak of the existing policy, but then when we started reorganizing sections and writing it, I recognized that it changed. It didn't change significantly in terms of its intent, but rather that the layout format and perhaps some of the language that's in there has changed. So that's, you may have noticed on the previous action request, I quickly highlighted the differences, but with this one, we've actually provided some, we'll call it like a wholesale rewrite of it. Highlights of the changes included just when we are looking for return of service agreements with staff. So that's whenever, if we're investing some significant township resources, dollars into training of employees, that we are looking for them, if they leave the organization for whatever reason within a certain time frame, that they do have to pay back some of that investment we've made in them. But really, and also identifying if we are requiring training because it's something that's required of their job, that's not something that we would necessarily require an RSA for. So we're trying to provide a little bit more clarity as to when that's required versus when it's not required. Expectations around registering for courses, when that would take place, if they don't pass tests whenever they're on courses. Fortunately, this is not something that I'm aware of has happened, but it's one of those things you want to make sure you're ready to deal with if that does come around. and then other types of things that we were looking to just provide some clarity in that policy with. So happy to take any questions, or if council wants to consider certain things in this policy, of course willing to take some feedback and come back if there's some adjustments that are needed.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Questions, comments? Councillor Lennox, please.
Just looking at the policy, I'm assuming staff and yourself spent a lot of time figuring out the meals and taxes, receipts, and a lot of quantitative measures there. However, for accommodations, it's just where feasible at a reasonable price. Do you think adding a maximum per night, let's say you go downtown Toronto, there's a big difference between the Delta and the Royal?
So I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of time and thought put into this one, and I can tell you that, and I mean, I can speak from my own experience whenever I attend things that are downtown Toronto. The maximum price is a challenging one because I have seen, just personally over the last 3 years, the change in pricing downtown. And so that's why we had even put in there, the clarity around that if there's a conference held at a specific hotel, like I think it's reasonable to expect that's where the employees are going to stay. And there's instances where an employee can't get into that hotel because the accommodations are full, but we want them to find something that's equivalent or less, not necessarily that they're going to stay at whatever the premium hotel is downtown. So that's the intention of the language there. But I welcome if there's another way to kind of describe that, or if that's not what council feels comfortable with. It was trying to find an equivalent or less than with that type of language.
Okay. No, I'm okay with the verbiage now that you explain it. I honestly don't think people are going to exploit this for personal gain. I was just curious how you came up with the verbiage, and thank you for your explanation.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments? I'm going to weigh in on the RSA. That was an issue, and we were seen for a little while, Mr. Hahn, as a training center. We would congratulate people for their efforts to improve the service they're able to deliver to the residents of North Dundas, and for very good reasons and different reasons, they would move on and they would take that training paid for by essentially the taxpayers in North Dundas and use that to serve the ratepayers elsewhere. And so I have some struggle. I want to maintain that RSA and maintain the gapping on words, but the spirit of the return of service agreement, and ensure that, and I'm not sure if I want to defer this or ask to have it deferred, but I really do want to express my concern. I understand how everything else works. I understand Councillor Lennox's concern and comments and your explanation to him, but it's the return, the RSA, that I have a feeling that we've been caught in that, and we had recently someone committed to following the spirit of the RSA and return funds. So that happened recently as well. So, Councillor Lennox.
I just want to speak to your point. The fire service has been doing their DZ training prior to 2019, I believe. They had to front the money and they would be reimbursed via the township. It has changed because the fear of firefighters leaving to become bus drivers or truck drivers is no longer there. For the RSA, yes, there is a risk, but I think it's a mitigated risk. And for me, the policy does work with the employee's acknowledgement. Yes, if we go the legal road, we may lose funds with whatever we pay to our council, but I think the risk is mitigated within the policy here, and I am comfortable taking that risk.
Well, it's good to hear there's a level of comfort, because I've been able to express my level of lack of comfort with that. There's always a lack of comfort with the RSA because you're entering into that territory of challenging someone on their trustworthiness and all of that, but it's more about ensuring that the investment by the community remains in the community, and that's what that's about. But I'm comfortable with your thoughts on being comfortable. That's for sure. And I think there needs to be, since there's not opposing views but concerns about that, we need to have some people weighing in on that with other opinions besides just you and I. And I look around. Yes, Mr. Hahn.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps and I'll explain kind of how this is intended to be applied, because there is still the RSA is still something that's in this policy, and there would be this would be applied. And let's say, for example, if I was a full-time employee here, which I'm not, but if I was a full-time employee here, and there was an opportunity for me to get my MBA, let's say. Which is a significant investment. There's a significant, in my view, someone in the CAO's role with that type of extra training provides a lot of value to the organization, but it's quite an expense to the organization as well. Like I would suggest that is a perfect example of when we should be executing an RSA with an employee, such as myself, to be able to get value out of training that is paid for by taxpayers, but then that training also comes back to the municipality to be able to benefit the taxpayers through that enhanced growth that I have, professional growth that I've achieved. Because MBA isn't let's and I don't have the job description in front of me, but I assume an MBA is not a requirement of the position, but rather it's a really great thing to have whenever you're sitting in the CAO's chair. But the alternative, as a professional engineer, I need to do professional development on a yearly basis to maintain my engineering degree. And I'll give an example at the counties, like that is a requirement of my position to be a PEng. So I will have to take courses throughout the year to maintain that designation. Some of those courses may be in downtown Toronto, and when you start to add up the cost of travel, the cost of accommodations, and the training itself, the Good Roads Conference as a great example, that's about $1,000 just to attend the conference, and then you got to add on meals and all these things. Like it adds up very quickly. Now we put a threshold of $2,000 in there. I would not. I think I would, as an employee, I would not. I think I could see that as a negative if I had to sign an RSA to go and maintain a designation that my employer required me to maintain, particularly because that ability to provide engineering services to the municipality is something that is a part of my job. So that's an example where, even though it might be over the $2,000 threshold, an RSA wouldn't be applied. So that's the intention of how this policy is being written, and that's from where I sit, how I see it being implemented throughout the organization. I fully admit I'm only here for a short time, and if council prefers clarity on some of these things or wishes to see some changes to that, like I have absolutely no objection to that either, and I welcome any comments on this thing.
Deputy Mayor.
I just have a question to clarify in my own brain here. So now you're saying the new requirement is any cost above $2,000, we're only requiring them, the commitment period is only two years? Is that what this says here?
I believe it's a minimum of 2 years. So there actually may be instances, and an MBA would be a great example, where that's a multi-year program where you actually might consider something that is beyond that 2 years.
So who decides how long it is?
The CAO. And that I believe the previous policy was written that way as well, that it was the CAO that determined the commitment period.
Okay,
Yeah, and it is a minimum, just for clarity, it is a minimum of 24 months.
thank you.
Thank you for raising that, and Councillor Urick, and I'll try to remember my thoughts. You go ahead. Yeah, please do. Please don't let me forget. So is it written in there, Mr. Hahn, did I miss it, where it says a minimum to a max to be determined by the CAO?
So it's in terms of when this is actually executed?
No, for the length of return.
No, it just says no less than 24 months and may be increased at the determination of the CAO and the director. So,
Okay,
if,
so it's
council.
captured.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Councillor Urick.
Yeah, I just think hearing it summarized, that way by Mr. DeHaan and, versus the
not jargon necessarily, but some maybe confusing language in the policy. I'm comfortable with that, and I think it is a matter of, return of service, but also a return on investment on the taxpayer's part, versus to your earlier point of being a launching pad to somewhere else. That North Dundee taxpayers pay for you to get whatever, and then, well, I'll see ya. I'm gonna go take something else, right? So I think it's having it in there is important. Professional development and all that is very important. I would never want it to appear that that's not. However, it is, when there is a mutual understanding between the CAO, the director, and the employee in question that is taking these courses, I do hope that it is done with the intention of going and learning and then bringing what you've learned back to North Dundas versus seeing an opportunity to take your learning elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've gone around and around. Shall I read it again? Moved by Councillor Annabelle, second by Councillor Lennox, that Council approves Policy 38-2012 Training Policy as amended this 11th day of April 2024. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Hahn.
Thank you.
And we'll move by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annabelle, that bylaw number 2024-19 being a bylaw to delegate certain powers and duties to officers and employees of the Township of North Dundas be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed this 11th day of April 2024. Mr. DeHaan.
Thank you, and I'll invite Director Pohl to come up with me because he's the big winner. Is that the way we want to describe? No, I'm kidding. The biggest I guess the biggest impact is to the services that Director Pohl's department provides to people that come in for planning applications. So I'll let him speak on specifically some of those items and how what the advantage is of this. And I do want to stress with council, I know I had provided a key information report several meetings ago about this proposed delegated authority bylaw. And I recognize there's a lot here, and from our perspective at a staff level, if council wants to sit back and consider it or defer this to the next meeting, that's completely fine, or provide some comments and for us to come back with an edited version, absolutely fine on our end. This is from staff's perspective, a great kind of iteration of the next step in our ability to provide services in an efficient manner, and we want to make sure we get it right. So if it takes us a couple tries to get it right, that's okay with us. So I did put together a brief presentation on what's in this action request, and what I'm touching on is really the highlights, the things that I think I really want to make sure council has gleaned from the complete delegated authority bylaw and report that we've provided. This isn't everything, but this is rather some of the highlights of that report and of the bylaw. So we'll go to the first slide. Oh, the clicker. I forgot all about that. Thank you. So this is one that's common to all department heads. So I'm not going to touch on these as we go through each department head. But essentially, and some of these things, to be quite frank with council, have been, I don't want to say occurring without the authority, because that's not the right way to say it, but rather just to make sure it's formalized in a bylaw that it's appropriate that we're doing this. So if we're approving purchases, anything between where we're less than $50,000 per our purchasing policy, that we are authorized to sign and approve it. It is authorized under the purchasing policy, but we want to make sure we're capturing it within the delegated authority bylaw. So that's what that's intended to capture there. The one that is new for council to consider, and we briefly talked about during key information report a couple months ago, was about minor capital budget changes. So we provided some, I'll call it like the context as to when that's appropriate from a staff level. And what the intention with this included in the delegated authority bylaw is intending to do is just to ensure that, if we need to buy a new refrigeration unit at one of our community centers, that if we often have to essentially, to make that a nimble change, we do it and we have to do it, but rather just to report back to council kind of what some of the things we've done in terms of making those adjustments without providing council that and then getting that approval to proceed. So it's just intended to make that a little bit more efficient for council. The other one that I see even at the county level, which is a good thing to have, is ensuring that we have the ability to execute applications for funding programs. One of the things that certainly my eyes have opened being here at North Dundas relative to the county is all the different funding opportunities that are available in parks and recreation. There's lots of things out there, and our ability to be able to sign and apply for various pots of money that various government organizations provide is a great thing. So we want to make sure that that's okay, that we can continue to do that. Now, if I'm talking very specific within each department and division, from the CIO level, and this was one I know we talked about wanting a little bit more clarity with respect to insurance and third-party claims. So what the intention here is that for insurance amounts, so if if a piece of equipment goes off the road and we need to resolve that through insurance, it's less than $50,000, that the CAO has that authorization. And again, this is still things that get reported to council. I don't want to diminish that. I just want to say that it's it's something that the CAO's got authority to resolve. And the other one, which happens in where my county hat happens quite frequently, is when you have damage to township property, the ability to recover those costs. If someone hits a piece of guide rail, we have a police report and we want to go and replace that guide rail, that we can go after that third party and recover those funds. So just the clarity that we have that authority to do that. One that actually happens, I think, right now, but infrequently, but do want to make sure it's clarified in the delegated authority bylaw, is if we have severe inclement weather, the closing of departments, and that's in consultation with the mayor, that the CAO has that authority to do that. Refunding fees per the tariff of fees bylaw. So, I can think of many instances in a planning application where there may be a requirement to refund some fees for one reason or another. Similarly, issue letters of support. I've had to do that already, or been requested to do that, to support various things that are happening within the municipality, and we want to make sure that it's clarified that I have that ability to, or the CAO, has the ability to do that. From the clerk side of things, a couple of highlights. One is the administration of the MFIPA process, and that, essentially that's just to identify that as the key person and administer that process. The other one, which is a little bit of a change, but designating events as municipally significant. So we often see that's, again, a reoccurring report that council sees, and it's a reoccurring event. That's events that are happening within the municipality, rather than having to kind of get that delay of getting that municipally significant event in front of council to get that support, is being able to designate it at the clerk level. The intention here, though, just to be clear, is that we're issuing this for reoccurring events, and new events are likely to come back to council, so that council has the opportunity to comment on it, and it gets out there in terms of something new and exciting that's coming to the community. For the Director of Finance, the identified additional delegated authority items are really there's kind of two things I wanted to point to council, is representing North Dundas and signing minutes of settlement for property assessment appeals at the Assessment Review Board, and similarly writing off interest, bad debt, and small balances on accounts. So that's just to clarify some financial matters. For the fire chief, one that's essentially occurring already, if I may, is issuing departmental permits. So we wanted to identify that, so that's clear that that's appropriate, that's being signed off, and also approving and commenting on fire risk and fire safety plans. Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, so participating in approving joint tender work when the process that's followed for that joint tender work complies with the purchasing policy and the value is approved in the budget. So that's partnering on with South Dundas to buy hockey nets, something like that. That way, has that ability to be able to join in, approve that work, because, and I can speak from my county experience, one of the challenges in joint procurement is if you have a bunch of different municipalities participating, which is fantastic, we get bulk purchasing power. But some of the challenges can be in the process is whenever that procurement occurs is, coordinating the approval through 6 other municipalities to be able to move forward with the actual contract. So this is intended to support that joint tendering process. And again, this is all provided it's within budget, and it's something that's been identified within within the work plan for the year. Similarly, approving applications for special event requests that have been previously approved by council and are of similar financial value. So this, I think, was going to start happening relatively soon for a lot of the exciting activities that occur throughout the summer. And what we intend to do here is, provided there's no real material change to what's been requested in the past, being able to approve that and move forward with all the coordination that's necessary there. If the group is coming and asking for something significantly different from a financial perspective, then for sure we would come to council and get council's approval for that. For the Director of Transportation, there's several items here participated, and similar to what we had for the Director of Recreation and Culture, being able to participate in joint tender work. The other one is approving temporary road closures, which again occurs at this point, but we wanted to make sure that it's clearly identified as an authority that the Director of Transportation has. And the reporting for that, if it's something more an emergency or short-term basis, it's advised via email. For special events and whatnot, we would advise in a monthly report to council. Last one is approving drainage reapportionments as a result of severance, and that's really as a result of wearing the drainage hat that our Director of Transportation does. Environmental Services, joint tender work again, approving temporary road closures, and that's in the instance where we need to do road closure as a result of water, sewer, something like that. And I can speak from my experience that these two work very well together. So there's a lot of great coordination that happens between the two, both our directors. So it's not like one is going to be usurping the authority of the other. Rather, they're going to be working together on that. And the last one is allocating units of water, up to 5 units of water for approved developments. And I'm going to turn it over now to Director Pohl to go through the planning items.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. So some of the items under the planning realm, I guess, are routine in nature. That's the ones that are being proposed. They're ones that typically council rubber stamps. It's just trying to speed up the planning process, speed up approvals for people to get going and moving forward with their applications. The first one is deeming a zoning amendment application is complete or incomplete. Typically, we get the application in, we look, we see that it's complete. I bring a report to council and you schedule the next public meeting. So there's a month involved in first bring it to this council, and then next month we're going to have the public meeting. We have to give 20 days notice. This would give me the ability to look at it as complete, let the applicant know it's complete, and then schedule a public meeting. And I'll advise council that we have this application coming forward and schedule a public meeting right away. So we're skipping almost a month's time to speed up that process to get someone moving forward with their development. So that's the deeming it complete. The next one's removing the holding symbols. Quite often you might have a holding symbol for a parcel of land with an R1, let's say, it's got a holding. They might be holding because they need capacity or a unit of capacity. We're going to start using this more often. Once they get their unit of capacity, we can lift the holding. Well, you'd have to wait for a month and advertise and get that unit released, basically, so they could be developed or that property could be developed. For significant ones, such as we used the example of the Wellings where we had a holding on it, that was a complex holding. There's 80 model homes. It's not your typical holding. Those ones I would bring before council because of the significance of what we're dealing with and the complexity of what we're dealing with there, to make sure council's in agreement with that kind of proposal. But for the simple ones, just lifting it for one house, that holding we would be able to do internally. The next one is to designate land within a registered plan of subdivision. Not subject to part lot control, and many of you that have been around the table a long period of time, whenever we have a semi-detached and they want to split it into two, you need a bylaw to split it into two. It's routine in nature, it meets the zoning, we pass the bylaw, and same with a townhome. So to split a townhome up into 5 or 4 units, or a row house, that has to be a bylaw through council. This would remove that from council. It's routine in nature. If it meets the zoning bylaw, the setbacks and all the frontages, it can get approved. So that'll simplify it. The counties already have that authority. The county planner already has the authority to stamp that bylaw. This would speed it up so I could get my approval within days, like 2 days, basically. They get the bylaw here, and then it goes to the county, they stamp it, and you're off and running, rather than waiting for a month to get the council to approve that bylaw to go to the counties. So the next one is authorizing temporary uses of land, buildings and structures. There's occasions where you want to allow a use for a certain period of time. Under the Planning Act, the maximum is 3 years. We've done bylaws before for 1 year, for 2 years. Sometimes people want to try something out. Let's see, we did one back in the day in Mountain where they wanted to do a little corner store, kind of a little depanneur in their back area of their unit that they had, the house. We decided not to do a permanent zoning. We decided to do a temporary zoning and allow it for only 1 year. See if it worked, the neighbors are okay with it or not. And if it doesn't work, well, then you don't renew it. But if it works, then you look at a permanent bylaw, and that would come before council. So these are temporary bylaws. It could be for something on the side of a property. We did one for Mr. Duncan's father, where they have a shipping container. They're going to be allowed to have a container on the property for a certain period of time, and after that, it's gone. So that's where a temporary use bylaw could be used on a temporary basis. Very quick, you just roll them out, and it's only for that period of time. You could even do 6 months, let's say. So that would help speed up those processes. The next one is restrictions to residential development and agricultural lot created by severance through farm consolidations, basically your surplus dwellings. Right now, we do a housekeeping bylaw once a year where we rezone the farmland to not allow a house on it anymore when the house is severed off. I typically gather them all up, do one a year. We advertise in the newspaper. We have to go through the whole process. The official plan has been changed to allow that to be delegated authority, so we can just pass a bylaw at the same time as the severance is going through, that land is frozen, basically. We don't have to do the whole zoning amendment process through a housekeeping bylaw. So that's to speed that one up and make sure that there's no house built on the farmland that's supposed to be farmland. The next one is to approve zoning amendments that are required as a result of condition of severance. We do get these from time to time where you get a flag lot. The farm is way back from the road. And then you have the frontage is basically between 24 feet, 36 feet. And it goes way, way back the driveway and then around the house. So sometimes you have a minor zoning amendment such as that to recognize that frontage as being less than what's required in the bylaw. Or you get the back area of the farm itself. It may not have been a 100-acre parcel. It might have been a 90-acre parcel. You need an amendment to recognize that the parcel is not meeting the minimum size in the bylaw, which is 96 acres. So in that case, you'd have to get you can do a variance or a zoning amendment. These would allow us to pass an amendment to recognize that undersized parcel. So that's a type of minor zoning amendments we're looking at as a result of severance. It has to be tied to a severance. It can't just be a minor amendment in those particular cases. The next one is to execute and approve subdivision agreements. We currently have 2 standard agreements, one rural, one urban. So if you're on full water sewer services or in private services, they're standard agreements. It's just to execute them, get them going, move them forward in a timely fashion. Once they've got all the work done, the engineering's done, it's just getting the agreement signed by the mayor and the clerk typically. The next one is site plan applications. So we'd be advised electronically when these go through. The Planning Act changed. It's almost about 1.5 years ago now, requiring councils to delegate that authority down to staff. You don't even have the power anymore. The Planning Act has changed to say it doesn't exist with council anymore. It's actually with staff. Staff in the province here is trying to speed up developments to make sure that they go through. A good case in point is the farm dealership. We just received for the new farm dealership on 31, the site plan for that. So once we get all the servicing and all that stormwater worked out, make sure it works, then we can just sign the agreement and get them building, basically. We don't have to bring it to council, wait another month to get approval from that. That's by law now, it has to be with staff. So this just clarifies that in the bylaw, we added it in. And that's it.
Good. So I think at this point, certainly welcome any comments, suggestions, thoughts, and we'll take it from there.
Yes, Councillor Lennox.
I really like this. When I first got on council, I brought up that some of these items brought to council should be approved at CAO level because it follows precedents set years ago. They're easy, et cetera, et cetera. However, the one thing I do notice that's missing from some of column B here is the governance. With some say update be provided council, some say council will be emailed, et cetera, et cetera. Let's take transfer of funds. And as just a hypothetical example, doors at the rink have to be replaced. Let's take $4,000 from the Hallville Park. Oh, the mural in Chesterville, we're going to donate money to that. Let's transfer $4,000 again from Hallville Park. I would like just a simple update, similar to what Ben sends out on a weekly basis of his little newsletter, just straight one-liners. This happened in the township. Here's your updates. I like it. If you can't justify it in one line, it should really come to council. But I would really like to see just everyone saying an update or a report to council, annual or et cetera, when the item is done, just for a governance standpoint.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Urick.
Yeah, my comments, I guess, very much on the same path. It's just in term, but I guess I was coming more from a, what's the, I guess, the feasibility or even the realistic expectation that that's possible. Because, I mean, I understand, and I think you made the comment, Calvin, in terms of, you know, getting building started and not waiting a month for another meeting and stuff like that. Well, I'm also thinking, I guess, from the council perspective of if this delegated authority goes through and something is decided and then it's another month before we find out about it. And maybe we have a comment on it collectively as council that perhaps we don't agree with the purchase or we don't agree with the path taken or something like that. So I guess I'm coming more from that perspective of just being in the know versus in a month's time finding out that, oh, this thing at the arena stopped working, we had to spend money, and it would just be nice to know. Not to suggest we're going to say we didn't know and not do it, but it's more of a being in the know versus, you know, I don't know, conspiracy theorist perspective of, oh, they're passing things and not talking about it, right? Like let's eliminate that because that exists and will continue to exist. And nothing aggravates me more than that and dealing with that. So I think if we're in the know as much as possible versus waiting a month ourselves, I'm content with moving forward in this type of fashion.
We're not saying that things break at the rink often.
Yeah. Just a lot.
Further questions, comments? I to my fellow councillors, I've said, and Councillor CAO DeHaan's heard me say it, and our CAO Rutley's heard me say it many times. I just need to know what's going on. I don't want to be caught on the street with a question asked of something that someone may have become aware of a transfer of funds to support the repair of somewhere, and then say, so when was that decided, and to say that. So I do agree with my fellow councillors that I'm not sure at what level we need to be informed of every type of transaction or transfer or thought, or, you know, every time you turn left or go right. I'm not sure how deeply we drill into that, but I do believe that I think we need to consider providing information to council either on, as Councillor Lennox talks, this is the delegated authorities that have occurred this week, maybe something along that line. And I don't anticipate this goes on every day, and I know it doesn't go on every day, but it.
Yes, no, and great points, and I completely respect that what council's bringing forward. I guess I'll give a personal observation from my time here versus my time at the counties. So my time at the counties, the way we budget is that a lot of items are essentially rolled up into a larger item. We'll call it like rink maintenance versus and you provide the detail to council of all the things that are included. And this is not intended to be criticism whatsoever. I think there's a lot of precision in the way we budget here in North Dundas, and that's a good thing. The handcuff that provides is if we have, and I'll use the rink doors as a great example, is if we have underspent on the rink doors and we need to, sorry rink, and we need to buy more netting because some netting has fallen down because of a big bird got into the rink, whatever that is. Like right now we're kind of, we can't actually do that until we come to council and get that approval to make, take the money we have over here and put it over here because we have that money over here to put it over here. And it's just, so I'm trying, I guess the intention of this is to try and improve that process at a staff level to a limit that that council is comfortable with. That all being said, certainly, I respect what council's saying, and if the intention or if the desire is to see something reported a little more regularly when this is happening, that I welcome that, and we can include that. Or if we want to lower the threshold, we can do that as well. Like whatever council feels. Ultimately, it's what council feels comfortable delegating to staff.
Yeah, and the threshold is important, and I think you have that. And whenever you're going through this, Mr. DeHaan, I was thinking of that threshold for the delegated authority for the purchases and such, and the transfers, and like these are a percentage before it becomes an action request, but I do think it's. And it's not, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'll let the others speak in a sec. It's more about being aware of what's going on as a result of the delegated authority. It's not to, in my mind, I'm not asking to challenge the delegated authority. It's just to be aware of what's going on, and I trust my fellow councillors feel the same way. And but I'll let them speak to that, the ones that have spoke. And that's what my intent is just so that we are able to talk about it when we're standing in line at Foodland. If someone says, "Oh, the door in your budget, the window at the door in Cheshire got smashed. How's that going to be managed?" Well, this is how it's been managed. We want to be part of not the decision so much. We've delegated the authority, but be part of the understanding of how we got to fixing that door. Councillor Lennox and Councillor Urick.
And maybe instead of a weekly update, to be more informed, quicker, and also keeping in line with streamlining, would a sleep on it for 48 hours where the individual who wants to use delegated authority shoots out an email to all of us? If there's no objections within 48 hours, they can move forward. We're still saving a month or two when it comes to planning. Jamie's grader will get a new blade eventually. There you go, Megan. No more picking on the rinks. And we will be in the know within 48 hours.
I'll go to Councillor Lennox. I let you speak. I'm sorry, Councillor Urick. I'm used to the bearded ones.
I mean, whether it's 48 hours, whatever it is, I think it's more to the mayor's point, and I very much agree with that. It's just being in the know, because, I mean, we certainly have a variety of community members who pay very close attention to certain things. And when I get a phone call and they're asking about this or that, the other thing, and if I'm not aware of it, it kind of puts me in an awkward spot, makes me feel like well, I'm not paying enough attention. So I guess that's more of eliminating that. I'm all for the delegated authority, and I fully trust that our staff members will make the appropriate decisions, and I don't want it to feel that's where I'm coming from with this. It's more of I just want to be in the know, and I want to know versus, knowing and being like, well, I don't like that. It's just being a part of, why it happened, the rationale. I mean, you explained it fairly well, Ben, in terms of, again, picking on the rink, but just as total hypotheticals understood, because things break at the landfill too, right, Danielle? So it happens. It's just, it's more being in the know and just being able to just speak to these things when they come up from, members of the community.
Yeah, I guess it's through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to Councillor Lennox's point, I think we have to be very cautious about essentially sending out an email soliciting feedback from council and making a decision through email, because that's, and I'm going to guess that that's a faux pas. We got to do that.
The clerk would have something to say.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. That's the intention of public meetings, right? And have that open dialogue with the public, and that's, I guess, the iteration of that is that's the intention of this, is that staff, have that full authority. But I will speak for myself, and I'm confident I'm speaking for all the directors here. There's no, I don't think there's any sense of mistrust from council, but rather it's loud and clear to me that council just wants to be able to explain to residents why we're making those decisions. And, I'm confident that with all the directors present today and hearing that they will very clearly understand that we need to make sure we've communicated to council why we've made that decision and the decision that's being made. That being said, if we want some formality around that, we can propose some different language in the bylaw to make sure that that's, similar to perhaps what we see in the planning delegated authority piece, which is, and I'm going to make sure I get my wording right. Excuse me. Service. It's along the lines of like, advising council electronically of what's happened is essentially what I'm suggesting. Is we could include that language just for absolute clarity in terms of what how we're reporting that to council. So if that's the direction we want to take, we can do that. If council says, you know what, and maybe we hold off on that piece of the delegated authority bylaw, that's fine too.
I'm suggesting to my fellow councillors that we look at the idea of being made aware of. I'd like to go through a period of, let's say, 6 months of being made aware of the delegated authority powers being used. Exercised, thank you.
Yep.
Being exercised, and then we can reevaluate. Do we need to be made aware of every time Mr. Pohl does this? Is this burdensome to Mr. Pohl? Is it really affecting? Does it make any difference? Have we ever been upset? Have we ever had concerns? And then reevaluate the frequency that certain things are delivered to us. But for the time being, I'd like to see a trial period to evaluate how necessary is it that every time this is exercised, we're made aware on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, something along that line. Because I trust that in time it'll be, I don't need more in my inbox. I just need to know about this stuff.
Fair enough.
So, can I get a nod of heads on that? Because I'm not sure if this is an amendment or not.
Yeah.
We're comfortable with that idea? Okay, so I think that's been expressed and understood then?
Yep, absolutely, and I'm get a nod of heads from the directors too. So yeah.
So, all those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Revisions to HR coordinator, moved by Councillor Annabelle, second by Councillor Lennox, that council approves the job description revision for the position of Assistant Administrator / Human Resources Coordinator dated October 5, 2023. Mr. DeHaan.
And thank you. And I recognize that council's seen this job description a couple of times now, and I respect that. I guess I'll tell you this will be the last time I'll bring it forward. So this is a vacancy or a position that was identified in the organizational review of last year, has not been filled yet. There's been several iterations of this job description, and I think I guess one of the key things that has I guess how the landscape has changed on this one is one of the resources that are now available to North Dundas, as well as all the other municipalities, is that the counties has a human resources manager. So it's executive level human resources manager that actually works under Ms. Castleman, who's here with us today. And I can share, from the township's perspective, just being, having the ability to work with Kim and Kristen, it has become a resource that's being used within this organization. So one of the big amendments one of the changes to the job description was just identifying that as a key stakeholder, as a resource for the position, because the intention is that, the high level understanding on human resources matters really is gonna, we're gonna look to the counties because that's the support they want to provide, not only North Dundas, but all local municipalities. And I think that, if I'm being quite honest with council, that this type of position is a model that other municipalities should look at and adopt, because there is a need within each office of each municipality to have someone that has that, focus on the HR side of things, but not necessarily has to be the everything to everybody, but rather just the go-to person that can get the answers that are needed. So that's what's one of the changes, the identification of using the HR manager at the county as a resource. I clarified some roles that the positions to provide, just again based on I've been here a little while and seen some opportunities that I wanted to make sure were in the job description. And we also just clarified the job description title to human resources coordinator, assistant administrator. So those are, I'd say key things that have changed. I have spoken with the CAO. She's very much aware of the changes and supports the changes. And it's been, I really, to be quite frank, I really appreciate the input that she provided and in actually getting to this point. So I'll welcome any questions.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. DeHaan.
Thank you.
Mr. Cheney. Moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Annable, that council approves the award of tender number TS 2024-02 for the supply and installation of granular M for the construction/maintenance of unpaved roads to A.L. Blair Construction Limited in the amount of $349,007.40, excluding HST, and that bylaw number 2024-27, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with A.L. Blair Construction Limited for the supply and installation of granular M for the construction/maintenance of unpaved roads, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed this 11th day of April 2024. Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, good evening. Tender TS 2024-02 closed on March 21st of 2024, and 2 bids were received. These 2 bid submissions were analyzed, and it is recommended that the award tender of TS 2024-02 to A.L. Blair Construction Limited, as they submitted the lowest bid and were in conformance with all the requirements. However, one note I want to just make council aware of, A.L. Blair's tender amount was $349,007.40, and if you look down in the financial analysis, the 2 budgeted amounts for 2024, the first one for gravel maintenance and the second one for rebuilding and pulverizing roads, was approved in the budget for $290,438. That amount that A.L. Blair's tender come back, there's a lot of provisional items that I added in there to get some pricing on. Those items will not be included in the 2024 construction because they are provisional, so we don't have any legal right. We do not have to take them. Just to let council know that we will not go over the total amount of $290,438. Excuse me.
Thank you. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried.
Excuse me.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councillor Urick, that council adopt speed limit reduction policy number 101-2024 this 11th day of April 2024. Mr. Cheney.
Again, thanks, council. From time to time, the Transportation Department receives informal requests to modify existing speed limits. This policy will establish a uniform approach to a process for speed reductions requested along specific sections of township roads. Speed limits are established now by the Highway Traffic Act, the Ontario government, and by speed bylaws from the municipal government. Staff have created a formal speed reduction request form, which is attached for residents to submit regarding a request for speed limit adjustment. The policy and request form, Schedule A, will be available on our website under Public Works/Transportation Services. When considering the request, staff will refer to speed limit reduction policy number 101-2024 and will also consider traffic engineering principles coupled with the roadside environment.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I appreciate seeing this form. I know in my time we've had different different phone calls, many phone calls concerning speed limits and to flesh out the reasons and when it occurred, that became a project in itself to identify what the situation truly was. And I think this would make it much easier to provide a level of satisfaction and comfort to those with the concerns. I think this is a good step forward. Thank you very much for that. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. I do. No, that'll be motions and notices of motions.
Okay.
Ms. Ward. Moved by Councillor Urick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that council approve the 2024 water and sewer budget as presented at the March 21st, 2024 council meeting. Ms. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. So in front of you this evening is just me looking for permission to move forward with the 2024 presented water and sewer budget. It is attached to that report for Council to review. So just a little bit of background. So the rates for the 2024 budget for water and sewer were set in 2023. So this budget is just using the rates that were set in 2023. We're not looking to increase the rates any further this year, just utilizing that rate base to get some work done in 2024. There is a list of capital projects that will be completed in 2024 for Council's review there, and they are listed in the budget as well. We are proposing as part of that capital works that a new capital rate study be done in 2024 to ensure that the capital rate study done in 2023 is adequate for 2025 rates. So that information will come back to Council in fall of 2024, where you will then set 2025 rates. So if you have any questions, I'm sure that was clear as mud. I can answer them at any time.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Questions, comments? About the rate study. Remind me, please, is this a yearly exercise or do we take it on whenever we see challenges?
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. So we would normally not do it year over year. However, because of the position we're in with the capital projects that we're seeing and the variance and costs, we have been doing it on an annual basis. It won't be a full, complete rate study, as Council saw at the last review. It will be more of an adjustment, just looking at all of the projects that have come in and we have final costs for them, and then projecting out where we anticipate to be with regards to development. So if we have any underground works to do, I do know we have some work to be done in Chesterville that's coming up, and then some other work with Calvin's department on new development. So factoring that information in and then making sure the rates accommodate that in 2025, and also making sure that capital charge accommodates that in 2025 as well.
Thank you. And the reason I ask is and I look at recreation, I think of recreation and the grants and such, how sometimes without them being reviewed, the grants for events and different groups, without being reviewed, sometimes they start to lag. And I was just wondering, and I think we've discussed putting a mechanism in to ensure that if they do start to lag, they don't lag as greatly. And I'm just wondering if maybe we'll discuss this at another meeting.
Yes, so through you, Mayor, just to highlight, the rates are set in that financial study that we did present to Council, so we would move forward with that. This rate study is not, like I said, not the full rate study, but it's just like an update to make sure that those rates are adequate, and that would be brought back to do an amendment to that existing rate study.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a CPI increase per year.
Thank you. That's what I was getting at.
Yep.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Mr. Pohl. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Urick, that council has determined in accordance with Section 3417 of the Planning Act that no further notice need be given regarding the changes to zoning amendment bylaw number 2024-30, and that bylaw number 2024-30 being a bylaw to amend the former Township of Winchester zoning bylaw number 12-93 as amended for a property legally described as Concession 6, part of Lot 15, former Township of Winchester, be read and passed in open council. Signed and sealed this 11th day of August 2020, excuse me, I thought it was summer. 11th day of April 2024. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. Maybe we can move to the presentation. This isn't a public meeting. This is a reconsideration of a bylaw that was presented almost 2 years ago. So I'll just go through some highlights of that and some comments received with council. So essentially, this application is to rezone a property that currently has agricultural and agricultural exception 18 zoning on it, and it's going to, the proposal is to go to an AG special exemption 42, and the other part of the property to go to agricultural. And I'll go through the details of that. So this is the subject property. It was owned by, or is currently owned by Jack Durant and his wife. So it's approximately 8.02 acres in size on Kittle Road. So it's 13055 Kittle Road. And you can see on the image there that there is a house located within, it's kind of a horseshoe on this or surrounding this site, or surrounded by this site. So part of the public consultation was that we held a public meeting back on August 9th, 2022. Following that, the County Council on December 18th passed an official plan amendment for this property. It only dealt with the rear part of the property. The image is quite poor from the counties, but that's what we got. I think when you copy and copy, you end up with something very, very dark, but you can kind of see the outline there of the area at the back of the property was the subject of the official plan amendment number 15, which would allow for warehouse storage and outdoor storage on the property. The appeal period ended this January 2024, and no appeals were filed, so that official plan amendment is in place, and that's a key piece of this puzzle, moving this project or moving this forward. So the proposed draft amendment we were considering back 2 years ago, there was an office on the property that was converted into a dwelling illegally. That has been rectified now. A building permit was obtained. They have reconstructed the building back into an office. That permit was inspected and closed, so that is a closed file now. It is back to an office. And that was one of the requirements for this zoning amendment to move forward. Based on neighbors' comments that we received at that August meeting 2 years ago, the proposed zoning amendment application was modified. So we sat down with the applicants and with the proposed owners, the prospective owners, and we removed outdoor storage from the front part of the property, so they signed an application amendment. So that was done, and then we moved forward with that. So I'll just go through some of the history of the property here. So this is the current zoning on the property. You can see the north part of the horseshoe part is agricultural, and the southern part of the property is the AG exception 18, which allows for storage of farm feed and things like that. It was like dog food at some time that was used in the storage buildings in behind. The applicant sought to rezone the entire parcel of property to AG 42 to allow outdoor storage, vehicle storage, RVs, that sort of thing in the front of the property, and to use the warehouses for office furniture storage. So that was objected to by the neighbors, the neighbor in particular in the middle there, and a neighbor down the road a little piece, who didn't want to see that outdoor storage all across the front yard of this property and felt that was too much land being rezoned and not appropriate for this particular property.
Excuse me, Mr. Paul. If you just go back one slide, when you talk about outdoor storage, are you talking about more buildings or strictly things stored outside?
That's correct. So things stored like
No
an
more
RV,
buildings.
RV, boat, that kind of stuff, or vehicles would be stored in that front yard
Okay.
of the two properties, the green area in the front there of the horseshoe, so
Thank
the
you.
west side of the property.
Thank you.
We're not moving. Did my battery die? Can you move it forward there? There we go. So the proposed amendment, or revised application, would keep the two front portions of the property as agriculture, so no outdoor storage would be permitted in there. It could be farmed, could be used for agricultural purposes, but only the rear portion of the property, which is shown here as AG 42, would be allowed to be used for warehousing and outdoor storage. Kind of right where you see the AG 42, there's a little piece of land there that could be used for some outdoor storage, but not a whole lot of space there. That's the proposal that they brought forward as an application, and that became part of the official plan amendment also, so it's isolated to that particular part of the property. So under the proposed amendment right now will allow these additional 3 uses on the property, which is the warehouse. It is an existing warehouse. It's only allowed for certain specific uses right now. This would open that up for the office furniture to be stored in there. The office would continue and be able to remain as an office, and open storage would be allowed in behind the buildings at the back portion is the current proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw. So as a courtesy, we sent out a notice on April 4th, or Thursday last week. We sent it out to the 2 neighbors. Those were the neighbors that attended the public meeting 2 years ago. We wanted to make sure they were up to date on what was going on. We sent them the actual notice, or a notice outlining what was happening and being considered by council, as well as we sent a copy of the draft bylaw, so they had an opportunity to see exactly where in the bylaw this was being considered. And there's a little image there of the existing storage buildings. So out of that notice, we did receive 2 comments from those neighbors, and I'll go through each of those different slides here. So the first comments that we received, they wanted to keep the original zoning on the property and not allow anything else other than agricultural-related warehousing. They expressed concerns over Kittle Road and the additional truck traffic on that road, which is already breaking down. It is a tar and chip road. Also expressed concerns of where Kittle hits the Boyne Road, and there is a little bit of a hill there, and the outlet of that road and trucks coming out of there, that turn radius might be difficult for trucks moving slowly through that intersection. They're worried about views of this and warehouse space. We like some buffering of the warehouse garage doors, either trees, shrubs, some sort of buffer along the that side lot line, which can be done through site plan control. They're also concerned that the outdoor storage might include storing dump trucks, large machinery, heavy-duty machinery, that sort of thing, as well as RVs and et cetera. And they also don't want outdoor storage at all, was one of the comments from that individual. The other concerns that we received with respect to the outdoor storage and the warehouse business so close to their residence. They expressed concerns over truck traffic and safety concerns, worried about the depreciated value and future interest in their property, should they look to sell in the future. Also some privacy concerns and safety concerns of children if they're playing out in the area with the trucks coming in and out. And also concerned that they will lose the enjoyment of their property. That property is right in this horseshoe, so it is a negative issue because you're surrounded by this site. They also expressed concerns over the outdoor storage, allowing it all together. They'd rather see outdoor storage completely not allowed. So under the Planning Act, as the mayor read earlier, there's a requirement that if a zoning bylaw is different than what was originally applied for, what's being looked at tonight, what was presented back in August 9th, 2022, council must determine whether further notice should be given, and that further notice would be a second public meeting, giving an opportunity for residents to come forward again and make comments. So the section of the Planning Act has outlined what's the requirement, and council shall determine whether further notice shall be given in respect to the proposed bylaw. So council has to decide if you want to do another notice, have a public meeting before passing the bylaw, or you have the option of saying, no, we're not giving further notice, we're just going to pass a bylaw or an amended bylaw again. That's entirely up to council this evening. So these are some of the other pictures of the existing storage buildings on the site to give you an idea for those that may not recall from 2 years ago what it looked like. And this is the property in question that is very, very close to the storage buildings. Part of what we're working through with the consultant that the proponents have hired, that are looking to buy this property, they have an engineer looking at it, is what kind of buffering we can fit in between that house and those units. They're looking to sit down with the owners of this particular property to figure out what's the best solution and what's the best workable solution as far as safety and privacy, as well as, you know, dust mitigation and that sort of things in and around that house to protect the house from any truck traffic and things like that that are in the area. There's not a lot of truck traffic expected. I mean, they do office furniture for government and businesses like that, so there's some truck traffic, but not an intense amount of traffic in and out of here on a weekly basis. So this is just kind of a zoomed in image. You can see where the outdoor storage is kind of limited. They have a pond in the back that's used for fire purposes. In the event of a fire, the fire department's able to draw from that, and part of the site plan control will be making sure we have a standpipe associated with that pond and that is deep enough to make sure we can put out a fire. In the event of a fire in the warehouses, we'd be able to put it out. Also, they're looking at a building permit to put in fire separations between these buildings to make sure fire department is only fighting one fire in one building, not all 3 buildings up in flames. So that's all being looked at as part of this building permit application. So outdoor storage would be in behind there, so there is buffering of that outdoor storage in behind the buildings. It's not something out front anymore, it's pushed in behind the existing buildings. So there is a buffer created there. So under the analysis, the official plan amendment has been approved by County Council, and it is in force right now. The rear property portion of the property would be zoned AG 42, which would permit currently the warehouse storage and outdoor storage in the rear yard. The front portion would remain agriculture. No outdoor storage would be permitted there. And a site plan is required, and that would be for buffering between the residential use and the abutting industrial use. And we also can consider one of the questions from the neighbors, if we could plant some trees or some, work with South Nation to get some trees planted. They're always looking for sites along that property line to buffer some more for the trucks that come in and out of that area, and make it look a little nicer and greener. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mayor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. So, as you said, we've gone through this process of the public meeting to hear concerns and questions raised by those neighbors. And to what extent have we, I don't want to say accommodated, but what extent have we been able to deal with the concerns that have been delivered at that public meeting? Have we achieved great success in moving forward, or are some of those concerns left unheard?
Yeah, so for the most part, we've tried to address the concerns. It's not a win-win for either party. They've backed up the outdoor storage, so they're not doing the outdoor storage in the front yard, so there's a sacrifice there that they've given that up. They've asked for some outdoor storage. If it's absolutely that they can't have it, they can live with that. They would like to have it. If they can't, so be it. But that's kind of the compromise, and there is some buffering and site plan issues that can be dealt with there to protect that back area. It could be used today for a warehouse for agricultural use, and you'd have all the same truck traffic in and out of there, so that doesn't alleviate that. I mean, the existing zoning allows for that, and even in the front yard right now, they could even bring buildings out to the front and do agricultural storage on the property. So truck traffic, it could exist today anyway. So that's kind of a mute issue overall. Yeah, we're trying to do our best to mitigate between two neighbors, or three neighbors in this particular case. And I think this is a workable solution between all three parties. It's not a win-win for anybody. It's each party gets a little bit out of the solution that we've arrived at, and they've amended the application to address that.
No, and that's understood. That's that old saying about the best deal is a deal where no one's happy, and where no one's 100% satisfied, I should say. So we've tried to deal with, and we have dealt with some of the concerns. Or you've dealt with some of the concerns, I'm gathering. Yeah, I'm not interested. My opinion, I'll just lead in with the. No, my opinion is that we've done the public meeting. I think this comes down to more of a site plan control issue, and how does the planning department move forward with the proponent on site plan control and dealing with some of those things, which take place normally. If there's something being constructed in the village, we look at noise abatement, shrubbery, things to block other things. So this is not an unusual path to go down. But that's my thoughts on that. I'm quite comfortable with the public process that we've gone through. I'll go to the deputy mayor.
Okay. At our very first meeting, I was one of the councillors who objected to storage in the front, because if I was living in that residence, I wouldn't want to see that on the side. So I'm quite happy with it now being just to the back. As far as outdoor storage on the back piece, from the picture I see, there won't be that much storage outdoors because there's not much room for it. The only thing that I'm wondering is the laneway, that's a joint laneway to the north of the house. The people in that residence, they use this laneway also?
That's correct.
Okay, so as far as traffic, if I was living there, I would like to have them use the laneway that's to the south, and maybe make a laneway on the edge of the property to the north side, saying that if that's a joint, where the laneway is now is not really on that residential property. It's outside of their property.
That's correct.
So if that was one of the site control things that we requested, the people in that residence would have to make their own driveway.
They right now have a right-of-way up
Right.
the roadway.
Right, but
and they
I'm
can-
saying
Yep.
if and one of the issues is the traffic and we have children playing in the yard, one of the solutions would be for the property owner of the warehouse to have a laneway on each end of their property and not right down the center next to this residence. But if we choose to do that, or if that is the proposal or the choice, then the people in the residence in the middle would have to make their own driveway. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Urick.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I mean, Councillor
it as-
Lennox is,
take it
I'll
as-
take it as, I'll take it as such. I'll take it as such. No, with the public meeting having already been held, I have no interest in opening it up again in terms of that process. I do feel like there's been, the party involved trying to get this rezoned and operated as storage in whatever capacity in which I think there's been some acquiescence on their part to say we'll take it back and we'll keep it from the front and all that. I do feel, to the mayor's point and even the deputy mayor's point, that we're kind of at a site plan stage right now where it's what is best for that homeowner in that horseshoe spot with all this that may happen behind them. And I do think, to the deputy mayor's point, if there is any ability to use that further entry point for truck traffic versus that shared one, then that is probably the best solution. Just to mitigate that even much further, where trucks are may come and may go. I think if we can mitigate that issue that much more, have them come in on the far side to the storage buildings in the back, then that's the better.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments, questions? And to the outdoor storage, whenever it's, and it's not my business, so I don't know how to manage it, but when I think of outdoor storage of office furniture, I just wonder about office storage. Office, it's not like an RV outside or a tarp boat that's outside. That I understand, but not much more as for office furniture being stored outside. And then I think to what you mentioned about the pond, maybe having a dry hydrant attached to it for fire purposes. If there's storage around that area, then that sort of negates the opportunity to use that pond. If there was to be outdoor storage, I think the site plan control would have to consider the fire access, since it's been talked about already, so it's there. And the fire service, the chief needs to be well comfortable with the idea that vehicles can get in and out or park and be serviced and managed to that space. Snow removal comes into play, and if there's stuff stored there. But if there was storage, I'm not sure. I look at that at the map and the outline. I think of fences that are higher than allowed by bylaw applying to have a special exemption, and higher fences for noise and dust abatement. It becomes a process, but it is a warehouse. Outdoor storage, I do believe, may have been allowed at one point.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
So may not, so not allowed. If there's a plan to go down that road with outdoor storage, I think there's a challenge there to make it appropriate to serve for sight lines for the neighbor, and to serve the fire service if that pond is proposed as part of the fire suppression. And I do consider what Mr. Smurl talked about tonight. He's looking for a property to plant trees on, and I think that's a good step forward, is to see if that's something that can be taken advantage of. So I do feel that it's site plan control needs to manage some of these concerns. Not every concern will be addressed, I'm sure. Mr. Pohl.
Yeah, if I may, through site plan control, also a fire route is required around the buildings, so they have to keep that space open and available, and access to the pond, the standpipe in the pond. So that all becomes part of that building permit and site plan control.
Yeah, and thank you. So when I look at the map and 13057, how it's outlined, I think you lose part of a fire route there because 135, that property could do whatever they want in that property.
Yeah, the lines aren't 100%. That's
Well, if
laid
they're-
on
if they're
a
somewhat
blank piece of
close.
paper. It's
You know, if, sure,
yeah.
so I'm looking at this, and that's my thought. If I see something different, my thought is different, but I look at that, and what I see there, that sort of eliminates one route with the guarantee access to for fire suppression. Maybe it's inaccurate, I'm not sure. Yes, Mr. Paul.
Yeah, it may not be 100% accurate. The lines, when they put those on, were done on a blank piece of paper, and now you have the aerial imagery, so they have never been corrected. The only way to find out exactly where it is to find the pins from the survey and actually, and that would be part of the site plan to make sure wherever you put a fence or buffering, you're on your own property and not on the residential property.
If there's nothing further, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. We're going to move into key information and, I'm sorry? What have I missed? Thank you for that. Key Information Development Services, Mr. Pohl and Mr. Mann. Is he here? No.
So this is not a good news story, it's a great news story. We put in 6 applications through our Economic Development Officer towards the county's Regional Incentive Program, and all 6 were accepted by the committee for the exact funds that were requested. There was enough money within the fund. So we're going to be benefiting from a large grant and a great expenditure in the township for 6 properties in the municipality. So this is going before County Council on Monday, so we're hoping that County Council gives its blessing on it and we can move forward with these. We just wanted to let Council know now so that you know that it's coming, and hopefully it gets approved by County Council, but we just thought it's a good news story, a great news story. Let's let you know. So this is all capital investments that'll be happening throughout the municipality.
No, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Mann's not here because congratulations need to go out to Mr. Mann and his compatriots at the county's level for to brag about it. This is the most in this uptake. It's the majority is, I believe, from North Dundas, and that goes to Mr. Mann's efforts and the benefits that are seen by the business people in our area. And I look forward to Mr. Mann being at a meeting so we can thank him, because this is, as you say, this is great news to see that. And yes, kudos to Mr. Mann and his efforts. Thank you. Chief. Jump right in. Yes,
Jump
the
right
fire
in?
prevention
All
policy.
right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, councilors. As previously presented to council, it has been identified that the township was lacking a formal municipality-wide fire prevention policy. Now that we're one fire service, we want to make sure that we're all encompassing. Having the ability to administer a single fire prevention policy will provide consistent delivery of fire prevention and education to all areas of the municipality. So I've provided you with a draft policy. Since providing that policy, I have been in discussion, I guess, with the consultant who's preparing our fire strategic plan. And I would like to we'll make some changes to that before it comes back to policy based on some of their suggestions, because they have provided some further insight as they're diving into our township a little bit deeper. So it's those suggestions have all been submitted, and I'll bring those back. But there's not a lot of changes, and I can give you an example of one if you'd like. One of the things that we said was distribution of public fire safety information and media releases. They have changed that to say fire and life safety. So there's not a lot of drastic changes to the policy that you have in front of you, just mostly verbiage.
Some tweaks.
Just tweaks, yeah. Nothing crazy. Still references all the same regulations and fire code portions FPPA. So nothing drastic, just some minor changes that will come.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I look to Councillor Lennox. Any thoughts?
Sure. So this is a first.
This is a first.
Literally a first. So good job. Skimmed through it. I think it's going to be an ever-evolving document as you bring in the other subgroups that make up fire, be training, and more inspection teams and et cetera. And I think capturing data, again, really justifies the important role that your firefighters play within the community and to the businesses.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, the consent agenda. Before I read the consent agenda, is there anything that needs to be brought forward by directors, managers, anyone? Moved by Councillor Urick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that all resolutions listed under the consent agenda be approved as recommended, and further that all other items listed under the consent agenda be received and filed for information purposes. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Urick, that council authorize payments of accounts as per the attached council report dated March 1, 2024 to March 31, 2024 in the amount of $5,556,375.02. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Did I miss that? Yeah, there is a change to the way we're doing things right now. Not today. I mean, I think this is the second day or the second stab at it, so it does cause me some confusion. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. I've lost track of my pages here. I'm going to jump right into boards and committees then. County Council, Deputy Bergeron. We haven't had a meeting. The Garden Party Market, we had our first meeting of the new Committee of Council last night. The Garden Party Market, the GPM. It is much in the same vein as the Garden Party Markets have been held in the past. Lots of interesting vendors with very, very interesting items for sale, from fruits to nuts to handcrafted art and everything. It will be held at the Joel Steele, at the 100 Club Park outside the Sam Alt Arena, and the first event is May 11th. And I'm looking forward to the continued success for the Garden Party Market. Art in the Waterfront, Councillor Annable.
They had a meeting a week ago this coming Monday. They've got 59 booths rented for it. They've got their entertainment nailed down. They are going door to door, well, not door to door, but business to business to get some money back up, and they're progressing quite well.
Thank you. CDHS?
I haven't been notified of a meeting.
I'm Carnival, Councillor. Green Action Gang?
Nothing significant to report, but to our many guests, I encourage you to reach out to Shirley Coons, the lead of the Chesterville Green Gang, and maybe join. Thank you.
Thank you, Dairy Fest.
We'll have our first meeting next week.
And Downtown Committee.
We had a meeting on Tuesday, Wednesday.
Last
Wednesday, last week.
Wednesday.
There was last night, but the
Last
previous
night I
week too.
lost my phone, yes.
Then yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the committee's progressing well. They've got their food vendors lined up. The advertising, I think, is pretty well covered. Vince is still going, like I said, door to door for some sponsorship. And we need a whole bunch of volunteers. We got them last time, and I'm sure we'll get them this time.
Thank you.
And we're doing whatever we can to make sure the weather is exactly as we need it to be.
Perfect.
For all 4 events.
Perfect. Yes, we need that this year. And then the Mord Rec Association.
So they're holding their meeting literally right now. I'm interested to see what comes out of this meeting. Last event was over Easter long weekend. It was a bunch of Easter egg hunts and a touch-a-truck event. Unfortunately, I could not attend, but I heard it was a great success and a lot of kids found the eggs they were looking for.
Super. And then we're going to move into motions and notices of motions, and I'll look back at you, Councillor.
All right. That the Council of that the Council of the Township of North Dundas requests that the county's SD&G consider implementing an automated speed enforcement ASE program on county roads in North Dundas to address the ongoing traffic speeding and community safety concerns.
Thank you. So we'll have, I see that next meeting we'll have more information and an action request.
I was ready tonight, but that was the pink slip they handed me to read verbatim.
Thank you for reading it verbatim. Petitions, none. Council comments? Any councillor comments? Councillor Lennox.
If you see a school bus with its lights flashing and arm fully extended, stop. Thank you.
Move to the ratification bylaw. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councillor Uhrig, that bylaw number 2024 to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed this 11th day of April 2024. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And finally, moved by Councillor Uhrig, second by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that council adjourn at 6:55 p.m. to the call of the chair. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation this afternoon. And see you next time.